they're recording for the online class. So, all right. How are y'all doing? Good? Good. So my name's Jamie Newman. I am from the Pacific Northwest. Pronouns are she, her. Come on in, friends. Yeah. And I am also, there you go. And there's a pen if you need it on the table there at the door. Yeah. I'm also the campus counselor, and I have put my contact information in extra big letters on the board. So if you ever need to avail me of your company, then that is where that will be located. I'm also here on the 3rd floor, and you're always welcome to drop by, but I am pretty busy, and I've got a little sign on the door, so if it says with a student, obviously I won't respond to any knocking. So today we're going to be talking about social relationships, and there was a request for some professional relationship nuances, so we'll kind of discuss all of that. But before we get started, my field of study is the mind-body connection and the use of nature-based interventions for mental health. So I always start with a little exercise. Everything in here is always optional, so don't ever feel like you have to participate, and it won't require a lot of movement. But I want you to just start, if you would like, and orient yourself to the room. So look around and see if there's anything that you notice that is either like a neutral object or an object that feels good to look at. And allow your eyes to settle. And just notice what inside of you tells you that that is something neutral or pleasant. So, for example, I'm looking over at my books, and I notice that when I look at my books, it feels like a little bit of like an opening in my chest, and I feel a little more like, right? And everybody might be a little different that way. And then if you would like, again, another invitation is to locate your connection to the ground. So maybe you can feel your feet on the floor, maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on how you're sitting. And maybe you can feel your torso being supported by the chair. And just notice where the most weight is. So for example, like I can really feel like my pelvis against the chair. There's less weight in my feet. So why are social relationships important? Well, we're humans, and whether we like it or not, we need each other. If you think about it, like nothing in our lives doesn't come without the assistance of someone else, right? Your food, your clothing, basically everything. So it's important to have good relationships there. And then recent research has told us that not feeling lonely, not feeling connected is worse for you than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So there would be less negative health benefits if you smoked a pack a day. That kind of hits hard, doesn't it? Yeah, so it's really important to feel connected. And then on a professional level, what's really interesting is the majority of the plum positions are not posted. So those are spread through word of mouth, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about building a network and how to maintain that over the years, especially as you move positions and places. And we'll talk a little tiny bit about, appropriate workplace relationships, because those can be a little dicey and deceptive. They're definitely not the same as social connections. Feeling okay so far? Okay. So let's start with, how do we even meet people? So there's some worksheets for you. These are just resources. We're not going to go through all of the pieces, but just take a moment and think about, well, let me rewind real quick. So in my field, I always ask people if they have 3 to 5 close social connections, like people that they know that they can lean into. If you're under 3, I get a little concerned that you might be a little isolated and aren't going to have the help you need when you need it. And if it's more than 5, I'm worried that you're scanning the audience for approval. You know what I mean? So, and 3 to 5 is about what most people can keep up with on a fairly regular basis. Now, the reason there's a spread is that everyone has a threshold, for socializing. So I socialize all day. The last thing I really want to do in my spare time is hang out. So I have a low threshold. I keep mine at about 3. But say, you don't see a lot of people, or you're a very extroverted human, you'll definitely want to edge more towards 5. That's not to say there aren't other people in your life. It's just those are the 3 to 5 that you're really tracking with, right? That also doesn't mean those are permanent positions. So the average friendship lasts about 7 years, so it's pretty natural for friendships to dissipate over time. As I often tell clients, you're born alone, you leave this world alone, and people come and go in the middle. And so really the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself, right? And that is kind of the floor we have to stand on, is cultivating a good relationship with ourselves. And you'll hear me circle back to that because it's just so fundamental. So where do we make social connections? School? Yep. Where else? Events? Yeah. Church, spiritual practices, yeah. Work, that's where I meet all my people. Work, yeah. Shared interests, shared hobbies. I want to say something here that is a little controversial. I think that internet relationships are just as viable. So if you're a gamer and you've got a group of people that you game with, those are relationships also. One of my very best friends who's been in my circle for 15 years, I've never met the guy in person. We talk on FaceTime all the time, but yeah, those are perfectly viable. It's someone that I can go to emotionally if I'm having a hard time. It's someone that I make time for if he's struggling, right? He's just really important to me. So those are viable relationships. It's helpful to have a mix of in-person and online, but if that's all you have access to, that's kind of how we had to do for COVID, right? Excuse me. So I want you to go back to where you met those people, and I want you to think about what's the basis for your connection with them? Because that can really determine the length of the relationship, right? So these people that you've met, what is it that you'll build your relationship on? Common interest, yeah. What else?
It's work or school, the relationship and when the class together ends and stuff.
Yeah. So that the specific time period, that thing that you're engaging in. Shared values, right? I don't tend to spend time with people whose values are super different than mine. It can be shared identities. Sports, yeah, absolutely. And so that can be kind of interesting too, to see what happens when that shared interest maybe morphs a little bit and whether or not the relationship continues. Yeah. And that's just something you play with, right? You just see what happens. Relationships tend to evolve and devolve rather organically. And we'll talk a little bit about ending in a minute, but so how do you maintain those connections? Like, what is it that you do to keep things going?
I text them and ask them how their day's going and having a genuine caring for them.
Yeah. Authenticity is crucial, and we'll talk more about that because that's also the ground we stand on. Meme sending, who sends their friends memes? Yeah, that's one of my favorite, yeah. Shared activities. One of my favorite people and I, like, we're in our 30s and 40s and we go to the grocery store together. You know, running errands. Like, do you want to come sit with me in the car and make jokes? Right? Yeah, for sure. And so there's opportunity there to build more bonds. You know, you can say I know this sounds really silly, but I've got to do this errand and it'd be so great to have company. Yeah. It definitely can make running errands a lot more pleasant. So are there any, if you think about the people on your friend list, your 3 to 5, so first, are there any people who are there who shouldn't be? I see some So think about this. Are there any people in there that are maybe, and again, every person is different, but maybe they take more than they give. Maybe they can't be relied on. Maybe they share your stories without your permission. Everybody has their things that they won't accept. So I'll tell you a story. One of my big not accepts is meanness. I don't like meanness of any kind. And I had met this person and she was super wonderful and we're having a lot of fun. We were really into a lot of the same things. And she called one day and said, "Hey, do you want to go to this little dive bar downtown?" And I said, "Oh, that sounds great." And she said, "My husband's ex-girlfriend's there. I want to go harass her." Ew. So what did you feel inside when I told you that story? Wrong. Yeah, for me it feels like my insides are kind of sliding back and forth like ick. Yeah. So we got to be mindful of the things that we, the company that we keep and how mirror neurons, are you all familiar with this at all? So you've got, it's a really interesting experiment. I won't go into it, but essentially the people you spend the most time with, you behave like. And that's not something you can help. It's my neurons are mirroring you, right? So if you're going to a room and everybody else is anxious and you're like, "Oh, now I feel anxious too." Or you say something and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I sound like my mother or my father." We have shared languaging, the words that our friends use are the same words that we use. Yeah, that's mirror neurons at work. So we have to be mindful of the people that we keep in our communities for that reason. So we've talked a little bit about why we boot them. Boot them sounds terrible, but why we would prefer some people to not be in our community. Are there people in your community now that you'd like to connect more deeply with? Yeah, I see a lot of head nods. So how do we do that? They're like, that's why I'm here to talk to you, lady. You were going to tell us. Well, we're going to go over some skills that are involved, but you really nailed something on the head when you said authenticity. So people can smell, not literally, but they can really sense inauthenticity. And again, that's why it's so important to have such a good relationship with yourself, to know who you are and to be keeping one eye on that so that you can be your truest self. And anyone worth having in your circle is someone who will like you for you, not for your mask or how you're performing. And like, let that sink in for a second. It's you at your silliest, your quirkiest, your irritated, your most unlovable when you are most lovable, right? It's hard to connect with someone who's perfect. It's so much easier to connect with someone who's real, right? Yeah. So, and we're going to talk a little tiny bit about how to be comfortable in that discomfort, because that can be a little awkward if you're used to being like, I'm fine, everything's great, I have my life together, right? So we'll get there, but so let's talk a teeny tiny bit about, and I know y'all know this, and so I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I can't emphasize enough, y'all are comfortable on the internet in a way that my people are not. And I've seen, heard enough that I've gotten a little skittish about the internet. So, one, screenshots live forever. Two, you don't really know someone on the internet, you know their mask. And as connected as you might feel, it's always wise, if it's not someone in your community, to be a little cautious about what you share. And sometimes it can sidewind you, and it actually happened this weekend. I'm really kind of glad, because now I have a good example. I was in a training, and it was a training where it was like international. And I got a text from a number I didn't recognize after we had shared all of our phone numbers. And someone said, "Where are you?" And I thought, oh, it must be someone from the training. So I immediately started to like type in where I was located. And I was like, wait, I just don't recognize this number, and I have no idea. It turned out it was a wrong number, and it was someone looking for their friend. But like, there's a lot of ways that could have been not so awesome. You know, if I had instinctively shared and it was someone not in that community that I felt comfortable and safe in, you know, it's very easy to slip and make a mistake. So less is more, and just be mindful of it. People are really, really good at getting information. So lecture over, I'll stop being a old person. Okay, so let's talk a tiny bit about the skills that are really necessary for, oh geez, tangled in this thing, for connecting to other people. And I want you to notice, gosh, y'all, I'm so sorry. I don't normally talk this much in a day. So I want you to just make a mental note of where you tend to fall on this spectrum, okay? It's not meant to be judgment. It's just meant to be a point of observation. So one skill that's really helpful to practice is clear, person-centered communication. So what do I mean by that? So if someone introduces themselves to you and says, my pronouns are they, them, doing your best to use the pronouns that make them comfortable, regardless of how you feel about it, right? Person-centered, other-centered communication. I know it can be really difficult to sit in discomfort. You know, I'm from the Northwest. It's just a different place than it is down here. And so I'm often sitting with folks and I'm having to go, okay, this is different than what I'm used to, right? Knowing the difference between things that are like overt and unacceptable violations versus this is someone's preference and it doesn't hurt me, right? So that's a skill we want to develop. Close is shaping language to what we know and is comfortable. So I will often use y'all. Such an easy one, right? Always in vogue, never goes out of style. A hard no is acting out, shutting down, and giving up. There's no way to connect there. The close gives some space, right? There's some potential there to connect with me, but I'm still, a little on the edge. But we're shooting for person-centered communication. When someone comes to me and says, I'm autistic. How is that different from when someone comes to me and says, I'm a person with autism? Language is so nuanced, right? I'm autistic is someone who's integrated, has been comfortable with that diagnosis, that wants to own that as part of their identity, versus someone who says, I'm a person with autism, says they really want their autism to be secondary to their identity, right? So people are telling us all the time, and we really need to listen. What are you saying to me about who you are and what you care about so that I can connect with you? Yeah? So practicing courage. It's not easy to be vulnerable. A close second is the everything's fine. This is the white knuckling it, right? It's not owning your pain or fear. That's close. You're feeling it but not saying anything, right? And the hard no is being defensive and putting your armor up. Yeah.
What is the category close versus no? I'm trying to understand.
Gotcha. So Brene Brown, this is material from Brene Brown, and she calls these near enemies and far enemies. So it would be close would be near enemies of connection. Nope would be far enemies of connection. So close is like something that's not going to really help you connect, but you're close, right? The nope, I put nope to make it a little clearer than far enemy. That's like saying, I just have no interest in engaging with you. Yeah, I'm shutting down because this does not work for me. I don't like what I'm hearing. And in an especially polarized nation, one of the best things that we can do for each other and for the world around us is for us to really work with these skills and improve our ability to connect with each other. Because you will never change anyone's mind by saying, I don't like you. I don't like this. That's gross. They're immediately gonna back away. You're not gonna have sold your point of view. You're not gonna connect, right? Everyone pulls their swords out and it's like it's on. So we wanna practice courage. We don't want to be defensive. We want to be curious. This is a tough one for me because I tend to live more in the challenging and criticizing. This is a place where I see that I need to do some work, right? Like if in a training someone says something and I'm like, show me your resources, right? Instead of being curious and being like, hey, where did you learn about that? What did where did that idea come from? Where is this feeling coming from? And even in this room as we talk about that, notice your response to this. So one clue that your nervous system, that this is touching on points that you're not comfortable with, is you might feel irritable or you might feel tired and zoned out. Those are all nervous system responses to material. So you can kind of this is where we keep one eye on ourselves and one eye on the person in front of us. So, rather than criticizing or challenging or being indifferent, I don't care enough about you to even ask a question. Right? That's a hard no. So be curious. Tell me about that. Tell me why you feel that way. Tell me what's on your mind, where you're coming from. Help me understand your position. Yeah.
I just want to say that I read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie.
And one of his methods is people like talking about themselves. So
Yes.
asking
Yeah, being like deeply engaged. You know, we think we know people. Man, we do not. I have no idea what is going on in your world. And each person is like this, like, I mean, it's just magical. There's so much going on in someone's interior world. And to be open and to be curious about that is to make a connection. So practicing humility. This is one I really want to nuance. I cannot say this enough times. Please understand the difference between being proud and being humble. People come into my room and they really struggle with this one. I don't want to be prideful. There's a big difference between saying, I'm a good therapist. I care a lot. Therapy is important to me. And saying, I'm the best therapist in the world. I don't need to learn anything. I study harder than anybody else. That's pride. Humility is being honest about who you are, right? Don't confuse being insecure with humility. And I can get in this space too a little bit, right? Like how many of y'all sometimes find yourselves connecting by cutting yourself down a little bit? Yeah, I totally do it. If I make the joke first, it'll beat them to it, right? It's a defense. And it keeps us from connecting with people, right? It's really important to be very, very mindful that you have a right to take up space just like everybody else does. An equal amount of space in every room. That means airtime for your voice. That means physical space. Yeah? One of the really interesting things I noticed when I was in the Navy was that some people will walk into the room and they'll do this. Yeah, they're shuffling their stuff underneath. And then other people will be like, yeah, everybody has a right to take up space. So making room for and not, if you're someone who speaks up all the time, what would it be like to come back a little bit and let someone else take up some airtime? Yeah. The last one is my favorite. This is committing to practice. This is a commitment that I make that hopefully y'all will make to connecting with other people. Now, do you need to be wide open to things all the time? Absolutely not. Heck no. After doing these classes, do you think I'm gonna be socializing with anybody? No way. No way. I'm gonna go home and be like, food is in the fridge, figure it out. You have a right to come in and take time. So when I say committing to practice, I mean saying every time I go into session, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be open. I'm gonna try to hear what this person is saying and feel it in my system. It's when I'm hanging out with a friend, being very intentional that I'm not gonna be on my phone with them. I'm not gonna be distracted. I'm gonna remind myself often that connection is a gift, community is a gift, and they are choosing to spend time with me when they could choose it to spend with someone else, right? So again, close but not quite is perfectionism. And I would even argue perfectionism is way over there, but who am I to argue with Brené Brown? Perfectionism says that I can't connect unless I'm doing it 100% right. It's setting myself up for failure and saying if I don't, if I say something stupid, it's over. It's easier, again, to connect with someone who's being authentic. And it's hard to be authentic when you haven't developed a very good relationship with yourself. So all of this applies to yourself, right? Oh, now there's a different perspective, right? How many of y'all shut yourself down? Yeah. How many of y'all criticize yourself or say it's fine when it's not? Yeah. How many of y'all feel if you're not hustling, you're not worth anything? Or you expect perfectionism, or you get stuck in fear and shame in your relationship with yourself? Yeah. My friends, there's people used to say, and I hated it, but they would say, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. We all know that's horse crap, right? People do it all the time. You do not have to love yourself to love someone else. But the quality of the relationship that you have with yourself informs other people on how to communicate and be with you. So when I said to that person, hey friend, I'm really not comfortable going to a place with the sole purpose of picking on another person, I communicated something. This we do not do. When I say to my friend, like, whew, I've been working all day, I'm so sorry, I can't come and have dinner tonight. I love you and I really want us, can we reschedule soon, but I'm cooked? They're hearing, oh, puts themselves first. When we're in a dating position and we say to our partners, like, oh gosh, I'd love to hang out with you, but I've got to study. You're communicating that your future is important to you. And you remember, you were in a relationship with you forever. You might be optional, right? Yeah. So again, back to this committing to practice, you know, a close second is like always kind of staying on the defense, always having my armor up, not really wanting to, you know, be sure, not wanting to put myself out there because I'm afraid it's going to look bad. And then the hard no is getting stuck in the fear and shame cycle. We are all going to say stupid things. The first time I taught a yoga class, nobody told me, but I was in a class and like half of them were doctors, like MD doctors. And I loved anatomy and I thought I had anatomy figured out. So I couldn't figure out why they were kind of chuckling throughout the whole class. And then to like ice the cake, and this was one of the first yoga classes I ever took or ever taught. You know, at the end they say, roll to your side and curl into the fetal position. I said fecal position. At which point everybody like was laughing at this point, right? And I definitely could have like went home and slammed my head in the freezer. I considered that. But it was an innocent mistake and we all laughed about it, and they all came up and like they moved toward me and teased me about it, and we got over it. But I definitely got in the car and was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna show my face in that studio again. Right? I could have got locked in that and decided I'm done. But no, I taught yoga for 15 years and made a great joke out of it. Yeah, could you imagine my face gets hot just telling that story? Right? So mistakes are gonna happen. If you're not making a mistake, you're not pushing your edge. Think about that. If you go to the gym and you lift 5 pounds every day and you walk the same 2 laps, are you growing? No. How do you know you're growing? It's uncomfortable. So if I leave the end of my day at work as a therapist and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, it's probably a pretty good day. But if I come home and I'm like, I'm pretty good at this stuff, I'm helping people, I might not be at my edge. I might not be pushing. Same with relationships. Conflict is natural and wildly uncomfortable. You're gonna get into conflict with people. When couples, I used to do some couples therapy, when couples would come in and they say, we'd never fight, I would say, who's the liar? Who's not telling the truth about their experience? Somebody's fibbing. We have to be authentic and loving and practice saying, hey, I love you and, not but. let's stop with the word but. I love you, and what you just did really hurt my feelings. Can we talk about that? And if we start to get elevated, we say, oh, time out. I'm gonna lose my marbles. You look like you're gonna lose it too. Let's take a break and come back. This is all a skill. You just gotta practice it and go, didn't do very good that time, but I'm gonna do better. Yeah? Any questions about this piece, the finding new people, staying connected to them, not getting murdered on the internet? Are we pretty clear on that? Yeah.
I want to just build off what you said about the word but. I've read this thing, Lana, you know this, but like when you say something and then say the word but, it's like you're totally disregarding the
Yes.
part of your sentence and consuming what you want to
Right.
say in the second half. So I do try that too, to say other words instead of that.
Yeah. I love you, and you're really important to me, and this relationship is really important to me, and I have to tell you this, right? Direct is kind, right? Think about what happens in your body. Okay, so say we're meeting for the first time and you're like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I'm awesome. How are you? Right? Every signal in your body is saying, you're not okay. But your words are saying you're okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and come in because culture says I've got to be nice even if your behavior is really erratic, and your insides are screaming. I wonder why we have anxiety. Or my all-time favorite is, oh, this relationship's going great. Radio silence. So now I get to spend the next 6 months wondering what I did wrong. This is fun. Direct is kind. I enjoyed our time together. I'm just really busy right now and don't have space for a partner. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, but I'm just really realizing that I've got a lot more personal work to do before I can go any further. Yeah, there's lots of like direct and kind ways to say things, but to just drop someone is to create anxiety, and that anxiety is a rolling effect. Right? If I'm anxious, that makes you anxious, which makes you anxious, which makes you anxious. And we treat each other in a way that just builds collectively this anxiety. Yeah, and it kind of stinks. What do you think? Yeah, great points. Thank you. So let's talk about professional relationships, which are kind of like a very squirrel secret trap. So professional relationships can be tricky, and I want you to remember one thing. People get real funny around their money. This person that you're engaging with may really be a good friend, may really enjoy your company, but will drop you like it's hot if it's an opportunity for them to make cash. And I'm not saying that to be hateful, but I'm saying leave a little space in those relationships and be well aware of where people's priorities are. So you may be really enjoying someone's company, right? You may have built a good friendship with them. But if the boss says, hey, it's between you and someone else, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Guess who's going under the bus? The reason I'm leading with that is I have fallen for this multiple times. And it can be a very tricky trap. So there's a limit to your friendships at work. Okay. Now, the second one person leaves, oh, it's on. You're welcome to be all the 100% in. But while they're there, keep a little space, keep a little reserve, keep a little caution about what you share. Which brings us to what you share. For the love of all things holy, no sex, no politics, no religion. Let me repeat that. No sex, no politics, no religion. I do not care if other people in this space have, Bible verses or, flags or whatever. If you want your career to be the focus, if you're career oriented, do yourself a favor and no sex, no politics, no religion. So what do you do if someone else brings that in? Listen politely, make interested noises, and change the subject. Practice this with someone so that you get really comfortable being like, that's interesting. Hey, do you know what time lunch is? Did you get Taylor Swift tickets? I don't care what it is, make it absurd. Do I have something in my teeth? You know, whatever it takes to shift away from those. Those are areas, so what? Yeah, they will drop it. People are pretty, for the most part, are pretty nuanced, and I will just walk away if they don't catch the original signal, right? And the reason for that is you don't want to be giving people ammo. The way you say things is not necessarily the way someone receives it. And those topics are just too sensitive and too easy to be misconstrued. It's really better to avoid that. So there's also, you know, you have, how many of y'all are in service industry oriented or medical field? You're gonna be dealing with like customers or clients, yeah, clients, patients, that kind of thing, yeah. So, any future therapists? Okay, this does not apply to you. We talk about all the things. The more uncomfortable and awkward and taboo, the better. But if you're working with like patients, especially in the medical field, you can't walk off. So you're just gonna keep making those noises and change the subject, okay? Treat people with kindness and lead with your curiosity. Why is this important for you to tell me this right now? You know, what can I help you with? What do you think? Does anyone have cases that they can think of where this has been a struggle for them? Yeah.
People have been persistent about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I never knew how to react to that because I don't want to, like you mentioned, give people ammo. So what would you do if they're being persistent about it and they haven't taken the hints?
Yeah, so then I
haven't even, you told them, hey, this isn't something.
Right.
They still go back.
That's a great question. So one of the things I always do is I center myself. So remember that grounding thing that we did at the beginning where I focus on the weight in my feet, and I think strong back, soft front. So I'll keep my strong spine and my soft front, and I'll say, friend, I might not be being very clear. This is not something I'm comfortable talking about at work. And I maintain eye contact until they trail off and go. Yeah. You just have to be direct. Practice that with people that you love and that you're comfortable with until you're really good at saying, no, thank you. I would rather not discuss this. Can we talk about something else? Yeah? How does that feel, just talking about it and batting it around a little bit? I'm seeing some crossed arms and some frowns. I know it's not easy, and I wish there was a shortcut, but there's really not. You just have to have firm boundaries in those areas. And again, a boundary is how you teach people to treat you. Yeah, and it takes a while to learn it. I'm still learning it too, because those flex depending on the person, right? There's a power differential to be mindful of. So when my boss persists in a subject, that's a different look than when a client does, right? I'm not going to be as direct in my eye contact. You don't want to stare your boss down, right? Now, when it comes to boss issues, you bring it to the boss first if you're comfortable, and then you go above their head, and then you go above their head, and then you go above their head. okay? Advocate for yourself. You should never feel unsafe in a work environment. Again, strong back, soft front. So I'm trying to think of any other work relationship things that I want to caution you on. So I think I pretty strongly cautioned you on the limits of work friends, right? Yeah, can you kind of see why that's sticky? Yeah. And it's not because they don't love you, they probably do, but they've got to pay their bills, right? Yeah. And we're pretty clear on why sex, politics, and religion are a hard no. Even if someone opens that door anyway, you probably don't want to walk through it, right? Yeah. Be yourself, but be mindful.
Sorry, I was just gonna say,
No.
I try to see the positives in people
Yeah.
regarding like differences that we may have. I see the positive in that person, and I'm like, hey, this is the reason why I like our friendship. Like, I think this in my head, and I think that it helps with understanding where they're coming from a little bit more, and not just totally thinking bad of them because of a fault that you don't agree with that
Yeah.
they did. Just
Yeah.
thinking of the positive things about them, because it's so easy to worry about the negativity in life and people
And get
the
caught in
world.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
That's leading with that curiosity. You really can't go wrong if the only thing you took picture of on this was those skills on the left-hand side. You really can't go wrong. If you lead with curiosity, if you lead with, I don't understand, tell me more, you'll be in a safe spot, provided that you keep that strong back. It is okay to say, oof, this is too much for me, or this is too far, or no thank you. So one last little tidbit, and the thing that I kind of wish professionally someone had let me know. And I gave you a sample. Your professional network. So this is the key to advancing your career. As you meet people, professors that you click with, out in the community, in your workplaces, if you feel like a strong connection with this person, put them on a networking spreadsheet. You'll want to have their contact information, phone and email, the relationship / what it is about them that you're like, oh, this is interesting. If someone referred, and the way I do mine is just, I do a list of dates after for contact. So what I want to do is I want to be sure that I'm reaching out to these people regularly. Now, regularly is a really nondescript word, and it really depends on you, but just a quick email or a text saying, hey, I really appreciate the time we work together. I wanted to let you know I am moving to Wallace State Community College as a campus counselor. Please stay in touch. The reason for this is people are very out of sight, out of mind. So you leave a field, you leave a hospital, you leave a workplace, it's going to be easy to lose you in the myriad of names, right? But if you're regularly reaching out and connecting with these people, like I follow my professional network on Facebook. Oh, I saw you published a new book. I saw that, you had kids, congratulations. How are the kids doing? Right? Keeping those light touches over the years. And another thing I do on the edge of mine is I write what year I met them. So when I go to put them on my reference list, I can say I've known them 20 plus years. That is very different than this is the last person that I worked with, right? So if I'm reaching out to this person a little bit every 6 months, every 3 to 6 months, they're remembering me. I'm fresh in their mind. So really cool. I have a wonderful professor that was my research professor, Dr. Turo. I regularly reach out to her and see how she's doing and what she's up to. And the last time I did, she said, I was just thinking about you. You know, I have a section of my book that I'd really like you to write. Do you think that would have come up if I was just another one of her students that never ever connected with her? No. It keeps you at the front of their mind so that when they're thinking of like, who would be great? I just heard of this new position. Who would be, you know who would be good? You're gonna be on the tip of their tongue. So this is probably the thing that I wished I had started the most when I was in school. I started mine after grad school, and I kind of feel like, you know, it's never too late, but this is something that doesn't need a lot of attention. It really doesn't. And just be sure that you send thank you. Thank you for being a part of my network. Thank you for thinking of me. You know, thanks for the referral, etc. How are we feeling? Is this helpful? Yeah?
Very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, so I do want to leave a little space for, I feel like the professional part was a little scattershot and not as organized. Does anyone have any questions around interactions at work? I'm trying to think of things that have been precarious in my experience. Exchanges of money and gifts. Be really, really thoughtful about gift giving at work. Borrowing money from coworkers. Never ever borrow money from customers, patients, or clients. It's wildly unethical. We talked a little bit about power differential. Do y'all understand how that works? Little, maybe, yeah. Who's got the power differential in this room? Yeah. That can be something a little under the radar sometimes, and you've got to kind of watch it. And in my relationship with my partner, you would think, so I'm cisgender, so my partner's a male. So, you know, who do you think would have the power differential there? Everyone's like, it's a trap. Generally the man, yeah, but in this case it's not because of the education difference. So I tend to get the upper hand in arguments and things. Yeah. So it affects the way communication rolls, right? So you just have to be mindful of that and be really respectful of it. You know, when I'm arguing with my boss, she always wins. Right? What about your peers? That gets trickier. What kinds of things affect power differentials amongst peers? Age? Nice. That's a tricky one that doesn't get caught very often. How about how long you've been at the company? Right? People who've been there longer, there tends to be a bit of a power differential there. What's another one? Money, pay. People tend to be very aware of what other people are getting paid. That can create a power differential. It's not something you're supposed to talk about. People do. Power differentials can shift. So in that example of my partner, If it is anything involving the house, mechanical stuff, the animals, right, the power differential will shift. And you can feel it, right? All of a sudden, I'm like, I don't know, right? You tell me what to do with it. Power differentials at work don't shift as often. Questions, comments, complaints, concerns? How are we feeling? Let's check back in. Come back inside of your body. If you need to reorient to the room or feel your feet flat on the floor, tail in the chair. How are we feeling? Good? Is there any way that I can support you? Anything else that you have questions around that you would have wanted more? Yeah.
There's one question where it's about personal relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to care about a lot of people, and I ask about them and be authentic with them, and sometimes I feel like that's not reciprocated, but I don't want to feel like, no, I don't want them, or I don't want it to seem like, oh, this isn't, I don't want it to be transactional, you know what I mean? I want to feel like I'm equally as important as I care about the other person.
Right.
And how do you make that adjustment?
You've got to decide. That's an excellent question. You've got to decide if the juice is worth the squeeze. For better or worse, relationships are largely transactional. And I know that that's not the most fun thing to hear, but like I tell you a little bit about you, you tell me a little bit about me. I show up for you, you show up for me. You've got to decide if it's okay with you, and be sure that you're taking really good care of yourself if this is the choice you choose to make. Some people are just givers, and if giving, nurtures you in some way, continue to do that and take care of yourself. But if someone's not reciprocating, take a hard look and say, is the juice worth the squeeze here? And that's when we've got to start having hard conversations with like, hey, I noticed that whenever I reach out to you, you don't reach back. Do I need to do this less? Yeah, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I have a question. So, like at school, I have a hard time like making friends with people, and I made friends with a few people, but it's just like mostly about like what'd you make on that quiz, or I like the color of your Stanley, and it never goes to like hanging out outside of class and stuff. So how do you make like more deep connections with people and like friends like in the classroom, but like outside of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you kind of lead a little bit more. So, I really like the color of your Stanley. Like I was noticing yours, right? And so let your curiosity draw you. Like, did you get that recently? Oh, you've got one too. Yeah, did you get it recently? Where'd you get it? You don't know? You don't remember? Okay. So I don't know tends to be a like, please attention off of me. So that's a sign for me to like pull back and to not pursue any further. But like, asking, I let your curiosity lead and ask deeper and deeper questions. Where did you get that? Are you from here? What are you studying? Do what?
Don't be creepy.
Yeah, well, and that's where you watch for the like people pulling back in a way. Some people don't. It's anxiety inducing and they feel too. And then that's probably another really important thing. It's not personal. If someone doesn't want to engage with you, oh dear friend, that's their loss. Okay? Not everybody has, and it could be a space issue. They just may not have space in their life for it. But yeah, keep pursuing, smile, keep your body language open. And if you get rebuffed, noted. No problem. Come back to your center, strong back, open front, and we'll try again. Yeah. kids these days, y'all are like sharing like Snapchats and Instagram, right? Like asking, hey, you know, do you want to connect on there, and sending something funny? Or if you see something funny on your phone, have it queued up to be like, look at this. Yeah. It takes that vulnerability, and whew, that can feel icky. So again, lean into your edge and pull back. If you need to recoup and go hide in the bathroom for a second, by all means, go hide in the bathroom for a second. Yeah, don't pummel yourself. Reach out and pull back. Yeah, great question. Great question. If I can support you in any way, there's my contact information. Thank you so much for sitting with me and allowing me to make mistakes and tell stories. So be well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.